Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to another Agency Success live stream here from hosting.com. My name is Nathan Ingram. I am the agency trainer and the one answering the question today, how in the world do we speed up WordPress? We've been having a fun discussion in the pre-show, in the chat, just talking about all the frustrations that it can be and it can bring to try to speed up WordPress when we get requests to do so, or if we're just trying to make sites faster. And it can be incredibly complicated. There's lots of different settings to fool around with. And one of the things that I find the most frustrating is that it's really, really hard to get correct information on how things are supposed to be sped up and what's really necessary and what's worth the effort, because so many of the articles and research that's out there and published on the web is written by companies who want to sell you their own optimization product, right? So how can you trust those things? I don't know, but it's a long time problem. It's been around for a while, and folks have been scratching their heads about it for years. And so a lot of times what happens, here's our demo site that we're going to be looking at today. You take a site like this, and we just run a quick lighthouse score on it, and it'll run and it'll give you some details. And then what do you actually do with this information once it actually shows up? Now, this is a slow site. This is our purplebeagle.org testing site. You get all these details that are about to pop up here. It's not great, right? 61. We've got a 12-second largest contentful paint, whatever that means. Speed index of 6.3 seconds, whatever that means. And then a whole bunch of insights. And you dig into these things and what does this stuff even mean, right? What we do know is that this is not great, and we need to know how to fix it, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about over the next hour or so. Now, I will drop in the chat quickly one more time the link to download today's handout. That is this 7-page PDF that's going to walk us straight through all the things we're going to talk about today, and you can download that in the chat. I'm also going to drop in our link bundle, which is all of our agency success links that includes all of our live streams that are coming up. We do at least 2 content live streams like this every month, as well as a weekly office hours where you can come in and ask me any question you want to ask. That is every Thursday at this same time, and we invite you to do that. It can be business related, WordPress related, tech, whatever it is. We talk about those things and try to work together to come to a solution. So lots of fun. Now, this is a topic, WordPress speed, that if you're doing WordPress either for yourself as a DIYer or if you're managing WordPress sites for clients as a business, this is likely a topic that you bump up against. Sometimes, you just decide to do a speed test and realize there's some problems. Sometimes you're trying to actually do some SEO work and you find that Google Search Console or other tools are warning you, hey, this site is really slow and you need to do something about it. And so we're all at some point going to bump our heads against how do we speed up WordPress? So let's just acknowledge the deal at the very beginning here, which is no matter which way you cut it, speeding up WordPress is frustrating. It is frustrating work because modern, beautiful websites tend to have a lot of design elements. Google, their homepage is one image, right? And they love speed, and that's great. But when you have a site that's something like this one, where there's lots of stuff going on a page, and you're trying to, and this is just a Cadence demo site, but there's a lot of stuff with pictures and, icons and things to engage people all the way down. Here's a really large video and a map, those sorts of things. Yeah, the more stuff you put on the page, the heavier it gets, and that makes them slow to load from the beginning. Every element going down a page just increases that div tree, and it makes the page slower for a browser to unpack. And there's so many testing tools available that give you widely different speed results. As a matter of fact, if we ran this lighthouse test again that we just ran when we started, right now we'd get a slightly, if not completely different result. And that is really frustrating because it's hard to know how to speed up WordPress when the score keeps moving around. And so that leads me to say this. Look, there's no magic wand for speeding up WordPress. There's no magic button. There's no easy button. There's no single plugin, no one blog post you can read or live stream you can watch that's going to 100% solve this issue for you immediately every time. Just doesn't work that way. Speed is very particular to the site that you're working on and its hosting environment and what's going on with it. And so what we're going to try to do today is give you some parameters to think around. These are the kinds of things I need to watch out for. And it starts with how the site is built to begin with. And then we're going to narrow our way down to some very helpful tools that are going to let us get into speed optimization. Particularly AI is making this even easier. So I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, so let's move on down. Speed optimization is hard. Whenever you try to do this work, if you get frustrated, join the club. We've all been there. This is hard work to do. You're going to have to invest time in learning how some of these things work. I'm going to give you a great framework for thinking about that today. But there is a lot of trial and error involved, sometimes a lot of error. And that's just part of the work. Also, if you over optimize your sites, and that's what a lot of these easy button plugins try to present to you. Oh, just install our plugin and hit the button and we'll take care of everything for you. And that might work on 4 out of 5 of your pages. Then you get to one page that has some interaction or a form or a purchase mechanism or a scheduling embed, and it's all broken. And so there's no single fix like this. Plugins cause CSS and JavaScript to be read at the wrong time and break. So while 80% of your settings might work on every site, you're still likely going to have to dial in some settings on particular pages or particular sites. That's just the nature of the game. Now, the good news is in 2026, speed optimization is getting easier. Server speeds are getting faster, especially if you're on powerful hardware like we offer here at hosting.com. We're actually, this site here, purplebeagle.org, is on a nice little basic VPS from hosting.com. It's great hardware. Memory allocation is great. It runs great. This site is slow, and we're going to unpack that. And especially if you're on optimized platforms like rocket.net from hosting.com. These platforms are getting better and better, and it does make speeding up WordPress a little bit easier. Also, core WordPress and certain page builders and block collections are really paying attention to speed and optimization these days because they know how important it is. Now, unfortunately, if you're working in a legacy block tool or a legacy page builder from way back, some were mentioned in the chat just a bit ago, it's going to be hard. Your work's going to be a little harder, but more of the modern tools really help to deal with these issues. And then, of course, there's AI. We're going to use a great AI tool toward the end of the live stream today to do some magical things to speed up WordPress. All right, so the question that I always get is, okay, look, does speed really matter? We feel like we need to speed up WordPress, but does it really matter? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on the site, right? And should you do things to make every site usable and not like completely sluggish for the user? Of course, like you don't want your speed to get in the way of user experience. But is it worth spending 3 or 4 days or hours or whatever to dial in a site to bump that number up just for Google's benefit? Like the site feels fast in every browser or on every phone that you're using to access it. It's just Google that's not given a great score, right? So it depends on how much time you ought to invest in a site like that to really ratchet up the speed. So content still wins out over everything. When it comes to search engine optimization, a slow page with the right content is always going to beat a faster page that doesn't have the right content, right? So it's still all about the content and that you're answering questions and the content is good and it's what the search intent is about. That's still the single most important thing. But when it comes to sites that you're running ads on, or if you're in a highly competitive industry where there's lots of sites with the right answer, that's when speed can start to nudge you up in the search index. Now, speed matters the most in these competitive categories. But here's the interesting thing. When it comes to AI search, like getting cited on ChatGPT as a source or cited in Perplexity search results, speed may be less important. Matter of fact, OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, none of their docs say anything about site speed. It's all about the content on the page, the words, right? Google, though, of course, their AI overviews take into account their regular search emphases, which does include, to some fraction, page speed. So if you want to be in Google AI overviews, page speed really does matter. And that's oftentimes a reason to do it, period. So there's three components we need to pay attention to when it comes to the architecture of things that are going to make our site run fast. The first is design. So speed starts with the contents of the page that's being loaded. So you take a look at this. Every time this homepage loads, there's a whole bunch of images that need to be loaded. There's a lot of rows and divs and text and icons, and here's a video pop up. And so all of these things are part of this design. All the elements on a page, just think of them as weight. And every one of these things is dropping more weight on that scale. And the more things on that page, the heavier that scale is going to get. Every single item on that page adds to the total weight of the page. Now, sorry, jumping around here. Text is relatively light. That loads quickly. But images, videos, and especially interactive elements that depend on JavaScript, that's where the weight really starts to add up. And so we need to think about carefully what needs to be on a page. Don't build a page with gee whiz elements, things that are, they have a gee whiz factor to them, like they're interactive and they do some things, but I'm not sure it even really matters for that. So keep pages as simple as possible while making them as engaging as possible. So we just have to think about what it is we're building and build with speed in mind. Just like many of you I know are building with accessibility in mind. You're getting your H tags in the right order. You're concerned about color contrast and those sorts of things. Same thing with speed. Just build with speed in mind. What do we actually need on this page so that it can accomplish its goal? Use the fewest number of images and blocks and elements that the page needs to accomplish its goal. And we really want to employ interactions and animations sparingly. Those are the elements that add additional CSS and JavaScript weight and make the page heavier. And this is a big one. Use static elements from your basic blocks and modules whenever possible. So for example, you might, a lot of pages like this, they might have a scrolling logo wall, right? Do we need that sort of thing? All that scrolling requires a JavaScript. It's more weight to the page. So, does a scrolling logo, carousel, gallery, is that important to the page? If so, great. But if not, let's just put images because that's going to make the page load a lot faster. Does that make sense? So how you design the page matters. The second feature that we need to think about in terms of speed is, of course, hosting. Even the lightest design is slow on inadequate hosting. Now, there's a place for inexpensive shared hosting. Those $5 a month plans are out there and they'll probably always be out there. And they're generally, look, I would never put anything on shared hosting. That's just me. But for personal or hobby sites, I'm not going to fuss about shared hosting. That's what it's made for, right? However, any site that is in competition for traffic, or this site needs to make money. If it's a business website, it needs to be on business grade professional hosting. That means a VPS or a VDS, virtual dedicated server, or a great managed WordPress platform like Rocket.net. Professional sites need professional hosting, period. And third of all, and this is where all the complexity comes in. We've designed our page well, we've got it on good hosting, and we still have problems like this. We had all those problems that showed up at the beginning that we saw in the Lighthouse score. Now we start to have to deal with assets. So we have to deal with image optimization. And by the way, we did a live stream on this just a few months back where we unpacked everything there was to do with WordPress and images. And there's a link to that video replay and the handout here if you'd like to go back and review that, or if you didn't see it, go back and rewatch it. Really helpful information there. Our images need to be optimized. Otherwise, they're just dead weight. They could be doing the same job for a lot less weight. We also need to deal with delivering the optimization of CSS and JavaScript. And that's where tools like Lightspeed and Hummingbird or WP Rocket or Perf Matters all come into play to help us figure out how all those assets are going to be optimized. We'll get to that with a live demo in just a minute. And then there is probably the single most important thing you can do on your WordPress site, and that's page caching. And so you need a page cache in WordPress. Lightspeed Cache, if you're on one of our virtual dedicated servers or virtual private servers, the Lightspeed Cache plugin is free and it's great. We're going to be using that in the demo. WP Rocket is another great commercial premium plugin. It comes free if you're on Rocket.net's platform, but it has little expense to it otherwise. Or there's a free cache if you're not on a Lightspeed server. This is Automatic's own tool called WP Super Cache. It's literally just push the button and it works. This is one thing that with a single click, you can page cache your entire site. It's generally, I haven't found anything that actually breaks. It works wonderfully. So those are great tools and they can get you out of the box with some good asset optimization. We're going to be showing how to do exactly that here in just a minute. But I want to give you the framework here, right? So it's design, it's hosting, and it's assets. And if you have your mind around those three factors, all that alphabet soup that we saw in the Lighthouse scores at the beginning will start to make sense. Okay? So let's move into then, okay, how does Google measure site speed? Now, you may be familiar with this tool. This is Google's on the web tool called pagespeed.web.dev. We can go to purplebeagle.org here, and it's going to run that analysis. And this is good for like a neutral offsite scan to take a look at what's going on. It will even, if your site has some traffic to it, it'll even give you an idea of what your actual users are experiencing because Google Chrome is reporting back to this PageSpeed Insights tool what real people are actually experiencing in speed when they're loading your website. And that can be really helpful. Now, it does take a while. So here we are. Yeah, there's what we got. All of our, so this is slightly different, again, than what we got before. But we have all these things that we need to deal with, right? Now, one thing I'll note here, they just added this to the Lighthouse score, and that's the agentic browsing feature to let you know how indexable or how friendly your site is to AI agents. Now, we're going to be doing another live stream later this month in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from today, about is your site agent ready? And we'll be using a tool to help us make our site agent ready. We're going to be doing this very site, as a matter of fact, to try to check all the boxes to make it as friendly to AI agents as possible. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. And you can get that here in the link bundle that I just dropped into the chat. That first link, register for upcoming live streams. And if you're watching this on the replay, that's always at upcoming.myagencysuccess.com. All right, so we've got this great tool, this PageSpeed Insights tool. But what I like to use, it's quicker, and it's what I will use as I am in the process of optimizing a website, and that is the Lighthouse tool that's built into Chrome itself. Now, what I recommend is that you use a guest profile. And the reason I suggest this, you could use an incognito browser if you wanted to, but we want to load a browser session where there are no extensions and we're not logged in, and it's as clean a possible view of that website as you can get. The easiest way, and the way I use, is a guest profile. So you get to that by clicking on your person icon here, your user icon, and just clicking Open Guest Profile. And we can go to purplebeagle. Well, how about we go .org? Sorry about that. We'll go here to purplebeagle.org. And there we go. And we go to inspect, just as you would to get in the Chrome Inspector. We click on Lighthouse. And if this is the first time you've used it, all these categories will be checked. You can uncheck everything but performance. So when we loaded this score earlier, it went through all of these tests, right? Accessibility, best practices, all those things. We can have it only run the performance and only on mobile. That's what we're the most concerned about here. So when we click this, it's going to go out and do that check live here. And it doesn't take nearly as long as running the full PageSpeed Insights tool. So PageSpeed Insights is great, especially if you want data from other people and how they're interacting with your site. But this is the way to actually do in-process speed optimization. So, all right. So here's all of our things. And see, we're still We're right around 6 seconds, within a half a second every time we've checked this, right around 4 seconds of Contentful Paint, and right around 11, 12, 13 seconds of our largest Contentful Paint. Now, what in the world does all of that mean? I'm going to scroll on down here to give you this table here. So here's the alphabet soup that goes into giving you your scores. So these are the 4 most important pieces. So your LCP, your largest Contentful Paint, that's this score right here. What that means is, how long does it take before the main focused item on the page appears, right? We want to get our content there. We want it to be under 2.5 seconds. We got a long way to go to get it there. This has to do with our design, and most always what's causing a longer LCP are images in the hero area and in the header itself. Like if you've got a logo image up there, which most of us do, or there's other images up in that header, it's all the stuff at the top of the page that loads first. Those images usually need to be dealt with. And if you've struggled for years to get that LCP score reduced, I'm going to show you how to do that in just a little bit with a wonderful AI tool. Now, as we go on down the page, the next thing we'll see is our CLS, our cumulative layout shift. Now, we're doing great there. There was no CLS on this page, but you'll notice this, like especially if you go to like a spammy site, like a recipe site, some of those are the worst. You're reading, all of a sudden, boom, the page changes because some ad dropped in 5 seconds after the page loaded or whatever. Super annoying. Google knows it's super annoying, and they penalize sites for doing this. We don't have any problem there. Now, here's what I've learned. If you do have a little bit of CLS that you want to get rid of, in my experience, just doing the kind of site building work that I do and probably you do, it's almost always some SVG file that is loading without the width and height specifically set. So a lot of times that'll happen in a page builder, photo or image module, or in an image block, and you put an SVG in there, and it's being constrained by the div that surrounds it instead of actually giving that image height and width. That's generally the fix. You can actually go into the SVG and change the height and width. It's just text, and that will help solve this problem. That's not turning up nearly as much as it used to, but if you find yourself having that issue, that is almost always the culprit. Now, scrolling on down here, the TTFB, the time to first byte, we'll see some of that pop up down here in this area. We want this to be under half a second. And this is how long does it take for the server to respond back the first byte back to your browser after a request is made. And this causes, or this is a high TTFB is caused by a number of things. It could be that your hosting is slow. It could also be, and it's more common, that you don't have a page cache turned on. So whenever the page loads, it's having to go out to the database and grab all this information and package it all up together and hand it to the browser. And what a page cache does is it does all that work ahead of time so that it has a ready cached HTML file that already contains all the information those database queries would give it, and it just hands the browser the file. And that dramatically drops TTFB. It's almost instantaneous. It's going to get you to that under 0.5 seconds unless you've got a really slow, terrible shared server. Then there's no fixing it. And finally is the INP. That's the interaction to the next paint. This used to be more of an issue than it is now because core WordPress and WordPress 6.8 started giving us a feature called speculative loading. And what that does is, based on where the mouse, like if your mouse hovers over a menu item or hovers over a button for a minute, it, in the background, without you even knowing it, the browser goes out and loads that page already. So when you click it, boom, it's just already there. It's almost instantaneous. And WordPress, thankfully, has started handling that out of core itself without you having to do anything. And it's going to be working unless you specifically disabled it with code. So this is just part of core WordPress. And thankfully, we don't have many INP problems in WordPress anymore these days, unless something is broken. All right, so let's take a look at actually doing some speed optimization, shall we? And let me just pause for a minute. Does what I explained help? Does that make some sense? Just to get some big ideas around what it is that causes speed issues and how to read some of these scores. If you have a question about that, feel free to drop that in the chat. We have a couple of questions that just popped in that I'm going to answer, and then we'll do some live demo, and I'll come back for a final Q&A at the end. So Elizabeth asks, what about Lottie files? Now, Lottie files are those animations. They can be really good and helpful, but I've also seen people over Lottie their sites. So it goes back to that rule of, do we really need this? Is it really important? And if it is, great. They are far smaller than, say, an animated GIF. If you have animated GIFs on your website today, 2003 is calling, it wants its animated GIFs back. Lotties they can be large. It just depends on the Lottie file itself. So just be aware of that. You can't really compress those either. You can have a Lottie file that's over a megabyte. I wouldn't use those. But if you've got 20K Lottie files, that's not a big deal. All right. The other question is about a specific tool that I'll get to if we have time after we do the demo. Okay, let me suggest a couple of tools now as we dig into how in the world are we going to reduce Purple Beagle's load time to something respectable from a 63 mobile score. And that's just not going to work if you're in a competitive industry like heating and air. Okay, so how are we going to get this down? Two tools. The first one, this is relatively new. This is a tool from Kurt Payne. Now, those of you who've been around WordPress for a while, you may recognize this plugin name, P3, the Plugin Performance Profiler. This is a plugin that for years was sort of the gold standard for optimizing code in WordPress and pinpointing what code was making a site slow down, especially on the back end. That plugin, he stopped supporting it a while back. This is the new replacement for it, and it's called Scrutoscope. It's a weird name. It works delightfully, okay? So you can learn about it here at scrutoscope.dev, and it's free. It's in the WordPress plugin directory. You can install it straight into WordPress. So I'm going to go on in here, and I'm going to activate that plugin, and let's just take a peek behind the scenes and see if we see anything going on. All right, so Scrutoscope is activated. So we're going to go Tools, Scrutoscope, and we're just going to start capturing a profile. And we want to do a visitor's view, measure what visitors experience. So it says, all right, go here, and let's do it in an incognito window. So we'll do what it says to do here, although that guest mode would probably be just fine. But we'll go there in this window, and we'll let it load, and we'll just kind of do some clicky for a second and let it load a few pages. We really have a slow page load. Look at this. I'm on a gigabit fiber, and it's taking, good grief, 4 or 5 seconds to load every page. That is crazy slow. All right, so we've clicked around just a little bit. I think we've got enough for it to look at. So I'm going to pull this out of the way, and I'm going to stop our profiling. All right, so here's what we get. A whole bunch of things. So here's the URLs that we clicked. All right, here's the home page. Look at this. This is taking between 2 seconds, 1.5 to 2 seconds to load. That is crazy that it should take that long. So let's take a look at what's going on here. We'll click View. And look, isn't this cool? This gives us a nice graph of all the things. And oh, look. Most of this time is, 90% of this load time is taken up by whatever this is, PB local weather. Now, I know what this is because I intentionally sabotaged this website with a really slow plugin, which is a weather tool. So this weather plugin right here, Purple Beagle Web Team, we built this, we, meaning me and Claude, built this tool that gives us this little weather. It pulls out and grabs weather, right? So it is taking, over a second. What is it saying? 90% of 2.1 milliseconds. You can do the math. That's a lot, almost 2 full seconds to go out there and load. Yeah, look at that. 1.959 milliseconds to go load this. So this is our problem. or this is a problem that is showing up when we try to do speed. Now let's just scroll down. Our first issue that came up here in this lighthouse test is document request latency. And that's one of the big things we want to deal with right away. So this is saying, look, there's 2160, 2.1 seconds it's taking before we even hear back from the server. That's our time to first byte. So the server responded slowly. And I look at that and I think, wait, this is a healthy VPS, and this is the only site on it. It should not take, 2+ seconds to respond. Now watch what happens when we simply go in here and deactivate that weather banner. Let's run this measurement again. Now I realize that deactivating a plugin is not often or not always the right solution. If we can and we have time today, we're going to fix this plugin with Novamira. But for now, all right, our score didn't change, but look, that latency is gone. All right, so that the time to report, all that is gone. So that problem is solved simply by deactivating that plugin. And we may not have known that was the issue unless we went in and did the whole activate, deactivate thing, which nobody likes to do. We wouldn't have really known that unless we had run into our great little tool here, Scrudoscope. And so this is a great thing. If you're trying to diagnose speed, this is particularly helpful on sites like WooCommerce sites with lots of add-ons and so forth, where you're trying to see, is anything really slowing me down here? This plugin gives you that great bar graphic that lets you see exactly what is causing that issue. Let's just take a peek and see if let's reload we should have a reloaded homepage. Yeah, look at that. Our new load time, it just captured it, is 211 milliseconds after we deactivated that plugin. So look, now that's kind of what it should look like. Cadence is loading some stuff. WordPress is loading some stuff. Yeah, so this is more than what we want. Like, we don't want 2 full seconds of delay while this poorly coded plugin does its thing. Does that make sense? So this plugin is a great first stop before you do anything else to take a look under the hood, and it's going to give you a visual representation of what is happening when a page is loading. It'll track front-end pages and admin side pages as well. Super tool. All right. Question in the chat, do you need to purge the cache before trying this plugin? You probably do want to. I don't have a cache active at all right now. That's part of our problem. But yeah, you can purge the cache if you'd like. It'll give a true version of what the page load times look like. Okay. Now we get to what I think is the really, really fun part. And that is Novamira. Now, if you've been on any live streams with me over the last 6 months, I've talked about Novamira constantly, especially in office hours, because this plugin, I want to tell you, I've been doing WordPress since 2008. I've been all WordPress since 2010. I have spent more time in the WordPress admin area than in most places in my life. I have tried hundreds of plugins over those years. This is the most important plugin I've ever worked with in WordPress, period. No kidding. It has made the most difference in my day-to-day work than any other plugin I've ever worked with in WordPress since 2008. It is remarkable. Okay. So what is Novamira? Novamira is an MCP for WordPress. Now, stopping for a minute. An MCP is a translator that sits between an app like WordPress and your AI tool like Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. And it lets your AI tool talk through the translator to your app like WordPress and do some things just in regular conversation in a chat. It is absolutely, it's incredibly powerful. You'll see some of it in just a minute. Now, you can learn more about it at novamira.ai. They have many things going on. The wonderful thing about Novamira is that the free version, That's all we're going to use here. Now, I bought the pro version way back when. I invested in it. I'm supporting the development of this plugin. I love what they're doing. They continue to release updates in the pro version. And there's reasons you'd want the pro version, which you can read about there at novamira.ai. But all we're going to use today is the free version. That means you right now can just download this plugin and start to use it. And you can do everything we're going to do here on this live stream. So what I want to do is go over here and activate Novamira. Now I've got the pro version here. Like I said, it gives specializations in, look at all these plugins. You know, it knows how to work all of these plugins, but we're just going to use it for core WordPress today. So I'm only activating the free version of Novamira. That's it. Now, our next step is we have to connect it to WordPress. Now, before we do this, here's the red siren warning, okay? With great power comes great responsibility. You are connecting your AI tool to WordPress. You're going to give it authorization to execute PHP functions, to use WP CLI, to go into the database, query, delete, add, make edits on files, and all of these things. Now, just look, make a backup. Make a backup before you use it, especially if you're just starting to use it and see how it works. Use development or staging site. Make sure your AI tool asks you before it does anything, because look, with great power comes great responsibility, and it could jack up your website. I've never had that happen, but it could, because it has access to all the things. But it's also incredibly powerful, so you just have to weigh that out, right? Okay, so let me show you how easy it is now to set this up. Now, when Novamira first came out, the setup process was charitably clumsy, okay? It was clumsy. It's a lot better now. So let's take a look here. Let's just go on into Novamira. Well, let's go here. I'll just show you. We'll click Novamira. And first thing we do is we turn on AI abilities for this site. Now, ignore this bit down here. I'd set it up a different way before. I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to set it up like you would set it up here with the new OAuth pattern. First thing we're going to do is turn on AI abilities and allow that. Okay, so AI abilities are now on, and when that happens, you'll see this red, you can't miss it, red, hey, Novamira is on, it can do things, all right? So it says, okay, we can do two options here for our authentication. Application password, it's still the way I use it for my agency for lots of reasons, but the new way and the simplest way just to get on the ground running is the OAuth method. So we click here and you choose your tool. Now, here's the trick. We are going to be using Claude, the Claude desktop app here, but I'm using Claude Code, but this is the Claude desktop app. The Claude Code option here is for the terminal version. You don't want to do that. Click Claude desktop here, and there's literally only two things to copy and paste. So what it says to do, open settings, go to connectors, and then we're going to add a custom connector. So I'm going to first copy this, and then I'm going to go to settings, connectors, and I'm going to add a custom connector, and I'm going to paste that first right there. Then I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and now we're going to authenticate. Takes just a second. Okay, hit connect, and that's going to pop open a tab where I was already logged into Claude in this browser just to make this a little quicker. I didn't want to have to log back into Claude, but you've seen this process, right? You open a thing, you authenticate with your username and password, you come back. Great, I authorize this connection, and we're done. Okay. Okay, so we are now connected. Boom, isn't that cool? So I have this session set up in Claude, ready to go here, and I'm going to say, please verify you are connected to Novamira using the OAuth method on purplebeagle.org. Now, by the way, the reason that I specified OAuth is my Claude is set to connect to our sites in a different way, and I didn't want to get it confused with that. Okay, so I just, see, it's trying to do it anyway. Do not use the switchboard, use OAuth. It is set up as a connector. So this will take just a second for it to get connected. Boom, here we go. It is talking to our website right now. It is exploring, what tools does it have available, and it's about to report back. Here we go. All right, there it is. All right, so we're in WordPress 7.0.2, PHP 8.3, the Cadence theme. We've got Nova Mira active. It has Pro, but it's inactive. How about that? Okay, so there we go. It knows what the environment is already. So what we're going to do next is we are going to work our way down our little problem here of all of these. I have too many windows open. Sorry. Oh, and we closed our Lighthouse score. So let's run this Lighthouse speed again. And we're going to let this kind of just work down through our issues one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to have it do is take a look at some of these issues that are popping up. So we got a bunch of render blocking requests. We've got some image delivery issues, and we've got some cache lifetime issues. Okay. We also have an LCP feed request discovery. Okay. So let's just start at the top. We've got Nova Mira connected, and we can say, the first thing we're actually going to do, though, is the single greatest impact to all of this is going to be turning on page caching. Right, so we've got Nova Mira connected. It's waiting in the wings for us to use it. Let's go over here and activate, though, our Lightspeed cache. Now, I'm using Lightspeed cache here because this is a Lightspeed server. And the Lightspeed cache plugin that's free in the WordPress plugin directory works with the infrastructure of the Lightspeed server better than a typical cache. So we have Lightspeed cache is active. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go into our page cache settings and make sure cache is on. So we're going to go straight down here. This is what we want. We're going to save changes. And let's just purge everything so it gets a clean cache rebuild. That probably wasn't necessary. But we're just going to take a look at that one thing and see how that impacts our site speed. All right. So let's run another Lighthouse check here, and we can compare them side by side. We should see some improvement. Okay, no improvement. Awesome. Sometimes it does take a minute, even though the page cache was active. Let's click around just a little bit, and let's run that speed check again. This is so much faster than using PageSpeed Insights. All right, so we're seeing a little bit of change here, but not a lot. But we do need that page cache active because as we start to work our way down here, it will definitely show up if it's not active. All right, so let's deal with a couple of our first items here, which are our render blocking requests. Now we have a ton of CSS, and just notice here, this is all CSS that's loading from all of those different cadence blocks. And this is a perfect example of what do we really need on this page? There's probably too much weight on this page to begin with, right? So, do we really need all those modules? We wouldn't have all this CSS to load. This shows, all the things that we're going to have to address. So if we were doing this for real, we might want to rethink how our homepage is actually set up to begin with. Do we really need all those elements, etc.? But we're going to just take it as is, and let's go down, and we're going to actually go into our page optimization here, and we're going to turn on minify and combine for our CSS, and we're going to turn on minify for JavaScript and defer our JavaScript to the footer. To the footer. So we've saved that, and we always need to do a purge action, just like it tells us right here. All right, so we have done that, and let's take another look at purplebeagle.org. All right, so let's click back and forth a second and see what that does to our speeds. Now, these are simple things that you've probably done in the past with any sort of asset optimization plugin like Lightspeed or Hummingbird or Rocket or Perf Matters or whatever you happen to be using. All right, so we did drop our FCP down 1 second. So the first paint, that time has dropped. We still have some largest contentful paint issues, but oh, look, our render blocking requests, that was where our huge giant line of CSS was. All right, we're now down to a single file, and that's because we combined it all, and that's going to be better. It dropped out almost a full second right there. So that's super helpful. All right, this is good. All right, so let's just leave this as is for a minute and move down to the next item here. And it's our image delivery. Now, there's a few images on this page that need some help. So for example, our cute little purple beagle up here, the logo of this business, if we move over here, look at that little tiny image is actually a 700K ping file. This is completely unoptimized, and it's 700K. It should be like 30K at the most, right? So we need to deal with our images. This is, we did a whole live stream on this. The link is earlier in the document that I gave you. Images are very important to WordPress speed. So let's go in, and I'm going to suggest for you a plugin that I haven't talked about before. And it's a great little plugin called CompressX. Now, we use EWWW in our agency work as we manage client sites. This is a wonderful free, probably the best free image optimization plugin you can get, because it will convert into WebP and even AVIF files. AVIF is really the leading image format now for retaining all the quality of an image with the single smallest file size. It is from the WP Vivid team, so it's a team that's been around for a while and is reputable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate this plugin, and then we're going to deal with the 3 images that our Lighthouse scan brought up for this page. So the first one is our logo, and I'm just going to jump over here to the library. I mean, we could go and we would normally just optimize all the images. That would take a little while. So we're just going to do a few of these that are on our homepage today. And I'm going to click convert here and watch how this image goes from 742K. It's reduced 93% or 96% down to a 27K AVIF. Awesome. Let's get the other 2. The other one here is called, what is this thing called? Something shabby.jpg. So let's find that one. And we'll convert that one as well. We won't get quite as nice of a conversion, but still we're down 40%. That's pretty good. And then let's get this last one, which is something outdoors. So let's find that one. Well, what is it called? Industrial HVAC unit. Let's try that. This one. There it is. So we'll convert that one. All right. So we got a pretty good savings on image size there. Let's just check our settings. Now I've tested this, and I know that on this site, this beta rule works a little better. So I'm going to just save that and save us some time. Any of these will work, but I've just found this one works a little bit better on our particular application. So this is saved. Let's make sure we purge all of our caches. And let's take another look at, at purplebeagle.org here. So we're going to need to click around a minute and let those caches reload back to our home page. And let's run our Lighthouse test again. So we're just working our way down this Lighthouse list, our little to-do list that it gave us. Okay, look, we're bumping up a little bit. We're down to 7.2. How did that compare from before? Yeah, so we're making some progress here. Now look, okay, we don't see images. That's not really our issue anymore. We still have some render blocking that we can take a look at. We've got some cache issues. It says still to improve image delivery, although we've pretty well done as well as we can do there. Okay, let's keep working our way down. What is this font display? Oh, there's tons of fonts here. All right, so the first thing we know we need to do is if we are actually loading right here from the Google Font CDN, that is always going to be slow. So it's yet another thing that goes into the design of the page and how we build it is we want to avoid at all costs loading in fonts from an external CDN, whether it's Adobe or Google or wherever. That's just going to slow things down. So this is a Cadence site, and so I know that Cadence actually offers in it's under general settings and performance. Most good themes have something similar where it allows you to load Google Fonts locally. And we're going to toggle that on and hit publish, and that ought to deal with a lot of our issues right there with some of those fonts loading. So let's once again purge our cache and see, we're just doing one step at a time to see how this is impacting our page speed. So let's go to a new window here. I'm going to close a couple of these just for space purposes. Click around for a second to warm up the cache, and let's run our lighthouse test. Let's see where we are. Oh, look, moving on down. We're up to 75. Okay, so fonts are starting to look good. We have cache lifetimes. We've got these 40K, I'm not worried about. Okay, here comes the part where Novamira is going to be incredibly helpful. And that is this LCP request discovery. So what is it targeting? It's targeting our hero area here on mobile, and it's saying we have an LCP issue here. So it's saying fetch priority high should be applied. Request is discoverable in initial document. What does that mean? I've never seen a setting in WordPress or my page builder or anything like that that deals with any of this, right? So now is where it's going to get fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this little bit right here. And I'm going to go into Novamira and I'm going to say, I'm trying to speed up the homepage on purplebeagle.org. And this is what the Lighthouse test is telling me about an LCP issue. Help me fix this. All right, so I'm just going to paste that in and let it do its thing. So let's see what Novamira is going to do. It's going to go out to the site. All right, we're going to look at the homepage markup. Excellent. So what is it doing here? It's going and looking at all of the code that's being loaded on the homepage here. It's thinking. Somebody asked in the chat about how this impacts my Claude usage. I mean, it's using it like any other, like just if I was having a conversation about anything else. So it's using my membership. I'm not connected to the API though, so I'm not paying. It's not metered. It's part of my flat monthly membership. Now you'll note down here, I am on the max plan now because we just use Claude so much. It's the best money I spend every month is the Claude membership. We get so much value out of it. So we're looking here. Okay, oh, look, I found the core issue where the image URL actually lives and the light speed situation. Okay, well, let's see. So it actually went a little beyond the home page itself, and it's found some advantage in light speed that we can actually use. So what are we doing here? We're reading. This is all style sheet. It's thinking. It's still thinking. Okay, so quickly pausing for you in the chat. How many of you are currently using Novamira? Give me a yes or a no there in the chat. All right. So it's thinking. It's looking deeper. What is it looking at? Interesting. So a lot of folks have not used it yet. So this will be fun. So just wait. This is taking a little longer than it did in practice, naturally, because we're live streaming right now. So just think about this. Novamira is basically a connector for Claude and WordPress, where Claude can just open the hood of your WordPress and poke around and find a problem and fix it. So, like, what's going to happen here, I think, is, oh, yes, it needs to generate optimized hero variants. Yeah, like, why should I be loading that massive image for a mobile device? And it's going to sort that out for me. Now, we could have Googled and Googled and Googled and tried to find some code and patch some things together and so forth. But let's see what it's going to do. Oh, look, it is writing an MU plugin right now that's going to fix this for us. Now, how awesome is that? Uh-oh, did I accidentally just stop it? I think I accidentally stopped it somehow. So with Novamira, Claude has access to the full file system. It can go read the database. It can write to the database. It can write plugins. It can change code. It can do all of these things, read your error logs and suggest what you might do to fix things. It is absolutely remarkable. But again, with great power comes great responsibility. You just have to make sure you know what you're doing and you're watching what your tool is doing. Okay, so it's going to build the file locally and transfer it with base64 encoding. Okay, so that often happens as you're trying to actually move. Okay, look at this. Did you see that? It wrote PB Hero LCP. It is a plugin. Look at this with a correct WordPress plugin header with all of these things, right? And it's just going to adjust how those LCP items are loaded. Now it encoded it in base64 so that it could push that file over to WordPress. And it's going to stick it in the MU plugins folder. Yes. So let's watch for this to happen. We'll go over here to the live site. Here we have, okay, this is a drop-in that Scrutoscope adds. But in just a minute, it's still uploading it. This has never taken this long as I've run through this flow several times naturally because we're on the live stream. But it is pushing it up now. And it's still pushing it up. So pretty remarkable, right? Oh, here it goes. Executing ability, purging caches. Look at that. There it is. Boom. Now, notice what it just did. Purging caches. This is connected to WP CLI. Novamira knew that the Lightspeed cache has a whole host of WP CLI commands. It just knows this because of the Abilities API in WordPress that's part of core. And so it went out, it knew we needed to flush the cache, and so it just did that. And it has an internal browser where it just opened up. Okay, does the hero render correctly? Yes. Still thinking, almost done. What are we doing here? It is reading the network requests, making sure everything loads correctly. It did something with JavaScript. And it's going to give us back a result. Okay, two things here. Let me retest with a clean load. Okay. So Ben says, would it be better to change the image for mobile in the block? No, because you know why? If you, for example, add a different background image for mobile, it's going to load two images now. And it's going to load two images both on desktop and mobile because it's a CSS background image, or in your block, it often just loads both. It just doesn't show it. Yeah. It depends on how your blocks are set up. So this is a better way, more reliable way to do it. I'm not sure what's taking it so long. This is the thing with generative AI, right? It's not following like a set process. It's thinking through and generating this as we go, and sometimes things happen that are unexpected. This is taking longer than ever has in practice. So it's thinking, doing all the things. I'm actually, in the meantime, I'm just going to load it here because the fix is in place. Let's do a full hard reload here and click around for a second to make sure our cache is loaded up well enough. And let's run our own little lighthouse test here and see if we still have these LCP issues. Oh, it broke something. Let's see what happened. This is going to be fun. All right, what happened? Lighthouse named a div, not an image. Okay. The hero, what I changed. I generated properly sized variants. Great. The original is untouched. Great. I added the plugin, purge Lightspeed cache, dropped. Okay. Okay. I think we may have run this too soon. Let's just run it one more time. Let's try this again, because we should have better results now. Okay, do we still have, okay, look, the LCP issue is fixed. Check that out. Now we still have some issues. We should have a higher score though with those two scores, but let's just take a look at what else we can do. All right, so I am going to just drop all of this down, and we won't do, image delivery is fine. Let's just take a look at this. I'm going to copy all of this and say, here are more issues that Lighthouse has discovered. Please help me solve them. And I'm just going to drop this stuff in there. Is there anything else here I need to deal with? Reduce unused JavaScript. I'm just dropping everything in here. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. And let's see what it's going to do with this. So it's going to analyze all these findings, and then it's going to poke around WordPress for a minute. Now, I know there's a few settings in Lightspeed we haven't turned on here yet, and let's see if it also points those out. Okay, let me pause for a minute. We'll reflect over to questions while we're waiting on Claude to do its next thing. Oh, while we're waiting, does the site look okay? Yeah. Site is loading just fine. So Beth asks, can being connected to Novamira reduce your Lighthouse score? Probably not. Yeah, there's a bunch of questions in the Q&A. Let me start working down that list of questions. Let's see. I answered about purging cache. Aaron says, do you recommend installing Lightspeed cache if your managed WordPress hosting already has a cache? Probably. Well, it depends on, managed WordPress hosting can mean 800 different things, right? So I would talk to your host and see what infrastructure your managed WordPress is running. Like, for example, if you're in rocket.net, you would not want to put on the Lightspeed cache because they have a different way of doing things, and they actually give you WP Rocket. The Lightspeed cache plugin is great if your server is a Lightspeed server. It works really well with that. So does that help, Aaron? Stacy says, does Novamira use your Claude capacity? And I answered that question. Karen says, Compress X. Would you use this if you're also using another image compression plugin? Probably not. That's just the general rule if you don't want two plugins doing the same thing. So pick one. And if you've got a premium, just make sure whatever you're using is a premium plugin. Compress X would be the big difference to that, because most free image optimization plugins do not offer AVIF or WebP. They want you to upgrade to that. So if all you're trying to do is get WebP and AVIF, Compress X is great. It just doesn't do other things like compressing JPEGs, and it just does the modern formats. Okay, let's see what we're doing here. Quick Cloud isn't connected. I don't want it to. Okay, it's doing a bunch of stuff in Lightspeed to remove the emoji script. Yep, adding pre-connects for third-party origins. Awesome. Let's see where it's doing that. Oh, look, it is editing our MU plugin to make these changes. That's pretty cool. So it has found these things that are going to help, and it's adding those scripts to our MU plugin that it already created. So we are moving right along here. And while it's doing that, we'll jump back out to questions. An anonymous attendee says, if you already had your site connected between Novamira and Claude, how do you disconnect and then connect to OAuth? as I can't connect via OAuth, which is because I was already connected. That's a great question. Um, what I would suggest is ask Claude, because you've created an application password. Oh, and actually, I can tell you to do this, but you can unregister it in Nova Mira here. So like, here's my, an existing application password. You can click revoke right there, and you can ask Claude how to delete that from its side, and it'll help you do that. Let's see. Billy says, do you ever use Quick Cloud? No, because it requires you to change your name servers, and I would rather have my site running through Cloudflare. Stacy says, I see that you copied and pasted the Lighthouse info so you don't let Claude look at your Chrome directly. It keeps suggesting I install Claude for Chrome. Yeah, okay. So that's a great point, Stacy. The reason I didn't do the Claude plugin today, I didn't want to add another tool to this. You could use a Claude Chrome connector, and I would recommend it because it just gives you a lot more power. But Claude has added recently, like in the last month, that in-app browser, like it was showing screenshots. It used to have to pop open a tab somewhere to get that. Now it's got this really nice in-app browser that it can do a lot in it already, but I still use the Claude Chrome app frequently. Okay, let's see. Verified healthy emoji gone, pre-connect fixed. The map is the last block of oh, look, okay. So check this out. The map it found as it was scanning the homepage, this Google map that we have down here at the bottom was set to load eager. So it's changing that to load lazy. Thank you very much for finding that and fixing it right there on the page. All right, all applied and fixed. Here's where things stand. All right, so it fixed the cache lifetimes. Excellent. Google Maps 46K was removed from the initial load. Excellent. We got rid of the stupid WordPress emojis. We added pre-connect for the Google callouts. That's excellent. That's going to speed us up quite a lot. So two that need, okay, we have unused CSS. This is really the same problem. Okay, this is our, okay, whenever you get Claude, and I've noticed this a lot, Claude Sonnet 5, Opus 5, and Fable, they just tend to give you many things on the screen, and it can be totally overwhelming. So here's what I'm going to say. These two things that need my call, please boil it down to me in plain English or plain whatever language you happen to speak. And so we're going to get it to, okay, the CSS one. It loads one big style sheet. This is better. About 3/4 of it rules this page never uses. Your caching plugin can strip that out, but it does require Quick Cloud. We don't want to use that, so ignore this. The Google Analytics one, I'd skip it. Okay, so we'll just take its recommendation. All right, so let's now see where we actually are on our page load speed. Let's make sure we have, did we lose our cache? Nope. Let's purge our cache just to be sure. Reload our page. Oh my goodness, we're 10 minutes late already. I totally lost track of time. Okay, let's just check this one more thing and we'll see how big of a win we just got. All right, here we go. Drum roll. Okay, 88. Where did we start? 69. So we've improved 20 points in a matter of just a few minutes. We're in the green here. We still have a little bit here, but look, that is not terrible. And if we kept going, I've gotten this site as high as like 93, 94. Generally speaking, this is a respectable score that's going to be just fine for SEO. So we have bumped some things up. We could keep working on this a little bit more. And we don't have time for this because we're already 12 minutes over. We could load that weather plugin back in. And what we could do is tell it, okay, this plugin was actually going out on every page load and fetching that weather and bringing it back. We could tell it, I want you to store that as a transient, or I want you to, you don't even have to know that. You could just say, I want you to fix this so that it's more performant, optimize this for speed. And it would create probably a transient for you in the database and fix that where it would not cause any speed issues anymore. So we've gone a long way. And let me just pause for a second here. We still have some questions in the chat, which I'll try to get to here in just a moment. But does this make sense? You see the framework? Design, hosting, asset optimization. It's going to come down to those three. What's on the page, your hosting platform, and then how do I optimize these assets? There's a lot of It's a lot of acronyms, a lot of words, but particularly with tools like Scrutoscope and especially like Novamira, you have the ability to connect to WordPress and start to see incredible insights, and you can just tell it to fix them, and it will. Let me scroll down and catch these last few questions. I mean, we're already running late, so why not? Stacy says, I see that you copied and pasted the Lighthouse. Oh, we did that one already. Yep. Claude Chrome extension is great. Elizabeth, will the free version of Claude tell you the fix and just not execute it? No, it will work. It'll still work. You just have lots of, your limits on how much you can use it are going to be significantly less. But you don't have to use Claude. Remember, you can OAuth this into any of these that are listed here: Gemini, ChatGPT, Codex, Cursor, VS Code, all of these things here, you can OAuth in with into Novamira. Next, Stacy says, when Claude writes a plugin you use, do you go back and regularly check it for security issues? Okay, great point. I blitzed through that just because it's a demo, right? Before I would run any live code, obviously, on a site, I'm going to look at it myself. And then when I don't understand it, I'm going to ask Claude to interpret it. We have a security advisor teammate for Claude that will load and have it analyze and just devil's advocate the code. That's another live stream than this. But we would certainly do that before we would just cowboy code anything onto a live website. This is the sort of work that we would 100% spin up a staging site to do. You wouldn't want to do this on the live website. Richard says, when Claude changed PHP plugins, etc., did you protect with a child site so an update does not wipe out the work? This site does not have a child theme, so it was fine. And that it did not affect, you wouldn't need a child theme for any of the work that we did today, because all the code went into an MU plugin rather than the functions.php of a child theme, which is where it should go anyway. The WordPress way says put that in an MU plugin. Sean asks about Seraphonite Accelerator. I've never heard of it, but there's so many tools out there these days, y'all. AI is creating AI, and yeah. Ben says, I use WebP on a site. Should I have short pixel create AVIF images as well? I mean, AVIF is generally a better image format across the board. It's going to be, a little bit, it depends on the image, but it's generally 10 to 20% smaller than the equivalent WebP. It all depends on the image and the contents of the image on how much it can compress. You just have to decide if the juice is worth the squeeze on redoing all your images. But in general, AVIF is a better format. It's more modern than WebP. And last but not least, Aaron, does Novamira work if there's a PHP fatal error? Thank you for asking that, Aaron, because what Novamira does, and we didn't see this happen today, but it has what it's called a sandbox. And when it's deploying files, it runs it in its own little sandbox. And if there's an error, it stops and it goes back to the AI tool to fix it. So it's really, they have done really, really good work on this plugin. It is quite fascinating. That brings us to the end of all our questions. I hope this has been helpful. We've been talking about this one for a little while. You got a little taste of Novamira, and I hope that you will dive in. Look, just connect a site to Novamira and start run a Lighthouse test and start working through it one at a time and see what it tells you to do. We did a lot of stuff at the beginning with Scrutoscope, and I knew what to do to turn some things on in Lightspeed. You could totally have Novamira look at what optimization plugin you're using. Chances are it knows how to use it already, and let it start to make some of those changes. Just make a staging site. Don't mess around with a live site. It is likely your jaw will hit your desk multiple times in that process, because this tool is spectacular. So anyway, there's your big picture overview of how to speed things up in WordPress, whether you're using AI or not. We've talked about a lot of things, and I hope this was useful. Thanks for hanging out with me today for the last 1 hour and 18 minutes. We're a bit long today, so I apologize for that, but I hope it was worth it. Thanks for hanging out to the end. I'm back on Thursday for office hours. As usual, every Thursday, we open the doors to the virtual office. You can ask whatever you want. And what that means is you can go and tinker with this today and tomorrow and come back on Thursday and ask any questions you want to about Nova Mira, and we will unpack those together in office hours. Again, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm Nathan, and for everybody at hosting.com and Agency Success, we're glad you're here. Hope to see you next time where we go further together.